Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm very excited to be here with Lisa Black. Lisa, hey, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm super thrilled to be here.
Now, Lisa has a long career working in the movies, and why don't we start out at the beginning? What is your origin story, as our guest host Castle would often say?
Well, I guess my origin story is I'm a published poet, so I was writing poetry since I was like 8. I went to Boston University, and I guess that's where it kind of really began. And my best friend is Oscar-nominated writer and director Mark Fergus. And Mark and I were lived on the same floor in Miles Standish Hall in Boston University. He was writing screenplays on the side. I was an English literature major. He was at School of Management, believe it or not School of Com. He would write all these screenplays and he won an Arthur Fellow Award and all these things. And so cut to he graduated ahead of me. He went on to work at Showtime, and he met his writing partner that he's been writing with for the past 25, almost 30 years now, Hawk Otsby, who also went to Boston University. So I guess that's how it kind of started, because as your best friend is writing stuff, and I was working in corporate America when I graduated BU, but you're always there for your friends. So I think my love of the film industry started because my best friend is a screenwriter, and I understand, being an English literature major, everything starts with a good story. So that's how it kind of started. And then in 2006, we filmed a film called First Snow in Albuquerque, in New Mexico. I was still working at corporate America, and my best friend was directing his very first feature. And so I was putting that together as a producer while still working, in corporate America. And of course, we had more known producers, and Bob Yari, bless his heart, he gave us the money to make the film. So I was really more on Mark's side, more like a manager, if you will, than an official producer.
And
But
I
we
think movies are often a collaborative thing, and that it's a friend of yours that really brings you into the fold. Of course, famously there is Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, or De Niro and Scorsese. Do you want to say a little bit about how friendships have kind of allowed you to further this career and excite,
yeah,
spark?
right. So the beauty of this is everybody always asks, oh, what do producers do? And the thing is, I while I was still in corporate America, the film was coming out. We were doing the festival circuit. We got into Tribeca, and this is the transition. It was from that moment on, having to be able to pull a film through. And this is your friendship. This is your best friend. You want to make sure that he has the best release, that they both, on Hawk as well, the best release they could possibly have. So I took it over. And it was very clear to me right from the get-go of Tribeca that, okay, we love creatives, but my corporate skill set married to my love for, good dialogue and a good script, that I needed to do this full time. So that inspiration comes from that, right? He gave me the opportunity to help bring his baby through to the light, and from there, um, I started to meet other filmmakers. Uh, I met Ash Christian, who I produced 3 or 4 movies with. He's no longer with us. Prolific, wonderful Emmy-winning producer, who passed away a few years ago. And each time I met one of these lovely, amazing, creative people, I realized that my skill set in business and marketing, and also my love of the script, as I keep going back to, can really, do something in this industry as a producer there. So I went all in 2008. I left my corporate job, and in 2008 formed my Shingle Garnet Girl.
Excellent. So First Snow is shot in Albuquerque, and it Albuquerque plays Albuquerque in the movie. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about First Snow?
Yeah, I mean, First Snow, I think you could still watch it. I think it's so we had Guy Pearce, we had Piper Perabo, we had Bill Fichtner, and Mark was living in Albuquerque. He had moved there from New York City, and he wrote this screenplay for it was his love song to Albuquerque. So All the locations that you see there, are intrinsic into the script. And at the time, Governor Richardson had just passed the new tax incentives, so I know that had a big part of also helping this tiny independent film back then it was still an independent, um, be able to get made. So, we hired a lot of people. There still was not a lot of crew. A lot of crew came from LA, and it was the beginning stages of what you guys are so good at now, which is, you have a whole industry built around, in your wonderful state. So,
Yeah,
um,
the
but it's
tax
the
incentive.
marketing part.
Oh,
It's the friendship part, right? We go back, you asked me about friendship,
yeah, go on.
somebody to give you that opportunity to entrust your baby. That really for me was the catalyst, if you will, to give me the confidence. It's hard when you start. A lot of people say, oh, you didn't go to film school, or you didn't start in the mailroom at one of the big agencies. And I didn't. I applied what I knew from corporate America, and I had very big jobs at corporate America. I mean, I had multi-million-dollar brands. But the other thing is, there is the creative aspect of filmmaking and being a producer, but it's also a business. And that's where, you know, having that support of your friend, but then moving on and doing other things outside of him. Having First Snow is a great example of the early days of this, what we all talk about now is filming where there's a tax incentive, right? So New Mexico, like Louisiana, I think at the time maybe Connecticut, but there weren't many states that are now like the state of New York and New Jersey, which are on fire. And then from there, learning that whole side of the business, I went over to Europe very, very early on in the early 2000s when nobody was going to Europe. And I learned the soft money system because our European filmmakers, they get supported to be filmmakers and we don't. So I learned how to marry private equity on this side of the pond and creative and scripts from this side of the pond, and then also work with our European folks so that development gets done through their money. And then we marry that with production money or P&A money, on the pull through.
It sounds like you were a
I
little
just said
bit
a
of.
lot. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, you were ahead of your time there. This is talk radio, so go ahead and talk.
Yeah.
Now, many people credit Governor Richardson, God rest his soul, for creating the tax credits. But it was actually the Republican governor, his predecessor, Gary Johnson, that created them at 15%. But then when Richardson was governor, he boosted them to 25%, which I think made all the difference. And then it built a lot of that early infrastructure and brought movies like First Snow, of course, and we know Thor, Avengers, a lot of those
Cowboys and
Transformers,
Aliens. Cowboys and Aliens, which Mark
Cowboys and
also
Aliens.
did. Right, exactly.
And then since then, the tax credit has been expanded further under Governor Susana Martinez.
Yes. And I get all of their newsletters. So as producers, right, you're smart if you get all the newsletters. I do want to do a shout out to Lisa Strout, who was the former film commissioner of New Mexico, because that is the other part of tax incentives. And when we're talking about supporting the film community, our film commissioners are really the backbone, if you will, of everything that makes a production want to come to a particular location all the way through, and job creation and economic development. And there are champions within our legislative system, as well as outward to the industry as a whole. I know some of the current folks there now, but I'm talking about all film commissioners around the world. It's an important role, and there are still some states like Delaware that don't have them, and you need them as a part of the entire legislative branch, and in officially in a budget, and what they can do to bring productions and create jobs is just as important as a studio head coming and saying, okay, I want to film in this location, right? Do you agree? I mean,
I agree. We've got a brand new one, Steve Graham, who we're very excited about. He lives in Santa Fe. He's a former producer, still a producer. And so he's just kind of perfect for what we've needed. And I know Lisa Strout has the Boston connection, so
yes,
that must have been perfect.
Massachusetts now. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
Um,
that must have been perfect for your friendship, of course, with the Producers Guild. Can you
I'm
explain
the
that to me?
co-chair of the Producers Guild of America in the Mid-Atlantic region. but I'm also a member at large, obviously, of the PGA as a whole. I'm also a SAG eligible actor, which is a whole nother
Oh.
story, but yeah, so.
In the public mind in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, it's a little, it could use a little demystification of what these film commissioners do, what their powers are. I know a big part about it is filling out the paperwork to get your tax incentive back and working as a sort of de facto locations department, but they can do a lot more than that. I know the Louisiana Film Office throws a great party at Sundance.
Yes. It's funny. There is a new trade organization. Most states have a film office, and they have several people that work within that film office. I know Lisa is now over in Massachusetts. And funny, I had recently, a couple of years ago, spoke to her because Emerson is a big one of the top film schools. And my daughter Beatrice, who happens to be Mark Fergus's godchild, I knew what I was doing. She was doing her student film, and so I said, please reach out to the film office, even at that level. So not only are they helping, emerging producers or emerging filmmakers for productions, but they're also helping, students who want to film there. So there's that education piece of what they do as well, right? So it's government knowing the rules, knowing the policies, things of that nature, but then it's also getting the word out about your state and the resources. And what I mean by resources is not just the money. It's like you just said, it's locations or businesses that might want to donate, which then, of course, if you're a line producer and you're looking at how do I reduce my below the line, how do I, reduce my budget overall, those little things, those relationships that those film commissioners do, they bridge that gap. So a lot of times you might be able to get stuff donated and that just lowered your budget. So that could be the difference, Doc, between a greenlit movie and a not greenlit movie, and that all goes into it. And when they work closely within their state government, that's when it really sings. So there is a new trade organization that is made up of a lot of little film commissions on other states, and it's called Film USA. And so I'm grateful that they consider me the unofficial Delaware Film Commissioner, in addition to being a producer, because we don't. We are one of the only states in Delaware that does not have an official film office.
Oh,
And
wow.
that is just crazy because there's no other way to highlight your resources than that. And they have that international organization called the AFCI. The AFCI has training. There's many facets to wanting to be a part of this industry, right? So that is another way for, anybody listening to this and you're thinking about how do I go about it? That is a whole nother way to be able to learn the industry from that perspective. And there's a lot of film commissioner jobs that you can go to school and learn. They have a course that you can take online and, you can learn that side of the business as well. And it does make for being a stronger producer. When you understand both the business side and the creative side, it does make for a better, what I call script to screen producer, which is what I am. There's a lot of producers that are just practical producers, but then there's producers that are script to screen. And so the PGA did a great job. If anybody's listening, go to the pga.org website, and they now have a list of guidelines of what the different roles of producers are, so that if you're giving out credits, hopefully you're not just giving them out, that you're actually giving them to people who actually have done those tasks.
Well, and a lot of it seems to be you're talking about ingenuity or using your mental capacity to create something or get something donated and save on the budget. Tell me a little bit about just ingenuity and how that comes into play being a movie producer.
Yeah, so can I use the example of the latest feature film that I just did called Death on the Brandywine? So Death on the Brandywine is a independent feature film to which I am one of the producers, along with the writer, director, and my fellow producing partner, Nick Wilkinson. And it is a murder mystery, Agatha Christie, Clue meets Knives Out type film, very fun. Very Godsford Park for any of us could remember the lovely Merchant Ivory guys. And, we both reside in Delaware. Could we have taken this to New Jersey and went through the process and to get the tax credits? Sure. Could we have gone to Pennsylvania right over the border and got the tax credits? But it was very important to Nick and I to show our home state that we have locations and we can do it and still sustain the budget. So what I'm getting to is that Delaware does not have any state tax. And so therefore, when you are making purchases, your wardrobe department is making purchases, there's no sales tax. There were no tax on our lodging. And so there was a savings there that in other states there are taxes. So that's why you're saving that way. So that we were able to make a SAG signatory modified low budget film right here in the state of Delaware. And we pulled crew from there's two regions in Delaware that you can pull from. You can pull out of the 487 out of Baltimore at IATSE, and you can pull out of 52. So we used both non-union and union crew. The other thing to think about when you're thinking about that is in certain states is that the SUI rates, your state unemployment insurance tax, right? Your fringes. So in the state of California, it's a very, very high fringe, very high SUI. In New Jersey and Delaware, it's much lower. So that is also a cost when you're looking at it. So there's lots of things that go into it. But for us on Death on the Brandywine, which by the way stars Tuck Watkins, Jay Hughley, Guy Narduli, the amazing Kate Burton, and one of Rena Sofer and Wally Marzano-Lesnovich, Ryan McCarthy, Michael Janae, and my all-time favorite, Walt Willey, who anybody who's a certain age will know that he played Jackson Montgomery for almost, I don't know, 50 years on the soap opera All My Children. So that was my favorite. And a cameo by Lisa Black. So
Oh, I'm
that
so glad.
yeah, that is the film that we took to the Marché du Film. My sales agent is Storyboard Media. Storyboard Media just released a movie called Riff Raff with Jennifer Coolidge and Bill Murray, I think, was in it in Toronto last year. So Storyboard Media took it to the market to sell. We did our screening there, and we are now we just finished a little more post, and we hope to have a world premiere at a major festival coming up in the fall.
And I know we were trying to connect while you were in Cannes with Murder on the Brandywine.
That's on the Brandywine. Yeah, that's okay.
Excuse me, Death on the Brandywine. And it didn't work out. But now that I'm seeing how much fun you are, I really wish we would have been able to get together. Did you have a nice time at the festival?
It was my first time back to Cannes in 8 years. As I don't think we covered it, but Death on the Brandywine is my 38th feature film that I've produced in some capacity, either as a producer, an executive producer, or there are several films that I've done with my international co-partners. We can't say co-productions, right? We're American, so we have to say co-ventures. That I've done with, some top amazing filmmakers. So,
And can you explain that? Why do we have to say co-ventures rather than co-productions?
yeah, because we don't have any treaties with European countries or the United Kingdom, right? Because of Brexit. So we don't. So we do it in other ways. And so we say co-ventures, right? So,
Interesting.
yeah, we don't, they have treaties. They can say co-productions. There's an actual whole thing that certain countries, when they work with each other, there's a minimum that you have to actually have that co-production partner be able to have. Usually, I think it's like 10% that they have to have as part of the whole package, right? We don't have that. We make up our own well, I don't make up our own rules, but we do it in a way where it's like a joint venture rather than because we don't have a treaty. So, anyway, that's a whole nother,
No, that I think that's an
to come
interesting
back and
detail.
explain why it is that so many studio films are now filming over in Europe. I created the model in 2011. So,
Oh, please tell me more
it was,
about that.
but it was really supposed to be for independent film producers like myself, like you, like, others listening on this podcast, is that, it was really the intention was to then partner with European filmmakers who know how to make great, amazing movies on a lower scale, right? But also be able to utilize government subsidy money, what they call soft money, to be able to do a lot of the basic things that you need to do to even get to the stage of pre-production, right? So a lot of that development is funded by their countries. Now there's other government schemes called Eurimage. There's Creative Media Desk. So those are similar to what our National of the Endowment of Arts is like, but unfortunately our NEA, it's so complex and so hard to get any of that money, and we don't want to even understand that it's all defunded now, but that is another way. So what's happening there is that it was really created, that model is to show we can marry our talent with your talent and still make great stuff together. You don't have to just make films with each other in your little European countries. You can make stuff with us. Not everybody is a studio. Like, how here we are. Unfortunately, for the independent world, but fortunately for the studios, they caught on. So they understand that there's a lot of development they don't have to pay because now they're working the model. They're working with European producers. So that expenditure that they were taking on themselves, they now don't have to do it. So
Lisa, we talked a little bit about how your model for making films overseas is similar or different from the spaghetti western model. Tell me, when you were coming up with this model, were you ever explaining it in a way that, oh, it will be like a spaghetti western?
yeah, and no, I think I was explaining more in a way of when we did a lot of back in the day, a lot of the studios had boutique shingles, right? Picture House had, there was, all those boutique shingles that they put in there. I mean, Focus really started out as a boutique shingle. Roadside started as a boutique. Like, there's a lot of boutique shingles that sat underneath the studios, and they would, obviously producers would sit on there, and then, they were basically a loss leader. They were there, great, make them. They made money, great. If they didn't, they didn't. So it's more about, I guess the latest thing everybody's talking about is that micro budget that's coming back. Do you remember like in the late 90s and like early 2000s, there were tons of movies being made for like 500,000 or less. And that's, I think, how they got the John Cassavetes Award for the Independent Spirit, right? 500 or less. But the thing is that you can, right? It just has to do with making sure that you have the right script that fits that kind of budget, but you can still make an amazing film for that. And so the model really is out of European films are generally not big budget movies. Remember that. If you look at any of them, the good ones before the studios were getting involved, those budgets were no more than 3 million euros, or back in the day they had different currency, but everybody was under 5 million. And they were making great films we love. Like most of the Merchant Ivory films, look at the budgets. They were not big budget movies. They're not. So it's more about that, those art, I don't want to call them art house, but just independent films when you don't have a lot of studio money behind you that you can throw, millions and millions of dollars above the line and put a lot of P&A against them and stuff like that. But to be quite honest, I think the model is really coming back, that even studios are finding that, even on their tentpole budgets, they're still having to do double what the budget is for a pull through. I mean,
What is a pull through?
yeah, meaning like, when they go out, okay, you've made the film, you've done the post, you've done all that, you've covered that, but you still need to market the film. And that was the traditional print and advertising model. But now obviously everything is digital. So now it's like, where's your social media campaign? What's your website? What, you
How
know,
many followers?
how many followers do you have? And that kind of pull through, because we all live on, this what is it, 6 by whatever inch phone. And now there's the big thing that people are talking about, verticals. That's like a whole nother world I can't even, even want to touch into.
Oh
But
yeah, I'm very against that. When they, start to close the curtains before the movie, I go, oh no.
yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, exactly. So that model, yeah, I mean, I think spaghetti was the original. Clearly they were. I mean, they it's funny. I made a feature film with an amazing, wonderful human, Domenica Cameron Scorsese. So there's another New Mexico tie. Her mother, Julia Cameron, lives in New Mexico. If anybody knows who Julia Cameron is,
She's
she's
been on the
the
show
artist.
about, I think she's had 3 appearances on the show. I ran into her recently. We were doing a Eddington screening with Ari Aster at Center for Contemporary Arts. And in the building next door, the Munoz Waxman Gallery, there's
Yes.
something called Exodus Ensemble, which is like a theater troupe. And Julia Cameron showed up to go to the Exodus Ensemble.
So the artist way, in case anybody knows that. But yes, Julia is, like a second mom. I love her. So Domenica and I, we started together. She had a smaller film called New England, which we never got off the ground, but we did do a film called Almost Paris, which you can see on most of the platforms. And that was her directorial debut. So the reason why I'm bringing up this anecdote is, obviously she's got famous parents. And the one thing that they'd tell us is that, you know what, just go out and do it. Just go out and do it. Find a way to do it, and did it. And so we did. We mostly made it with private equity. But we did do the movie, and it was released by Freestyle Releasing, and Abigail Hawke is in it, and Wally Marzanne again. Wally and I work a lot together. So, and it was Susan Veron, and we just had Adam Lefevre. I mean, these are great character actors that have been in big tentpole movies that were so kind enough to be in Almost Paris. So,
Well, and how far is Almost Paris from where we left off in your career in 2008?
So I went over. So the reason why I got into Europe is I went over to the European film market in February, not knowing anybody and knowing what I knew coming off of First Snow. And I just hadn't met Ash Christian when we were putting together a little film called Mangus. I went over and I just did what I always do, which is I just told, I did not fake it till you make it. I said, I don't know this. And you'd be really surprised when you say, I don't know. People really do tell you a lot of stuff. So I was fortunate enough to, believe it or not, get in with a lot of film commissioners. And they introduced me to a lot of amazing, amazing European filmmakers. And it all kind of started there. I actually at one point was the North American consultant for the EUFCM, the European Union Film Commission Network. But I went
Huh.
over, I was invited to Norway on a producing envoy. I was invited to Colombia on a new producing envoy. So I started to kind of think about, okay, could we do Almost Paris over there, and started to think about the model that way. But instead, our investors were based in Long Island. So we shot the movie in Long Island. But at the same time of shooting Almost Paris, I actually was then shot a little film called Miles, which I also believe may have played your festival, starring Molly Shannon, Missy Piles, the great Paul Reiser, director Nathan Adloff. So actually, those two were almost like back to back at the same time. So that would say early on in my career, that's when I was starting to get full producing credits and like putting the whole thing together from that point. But back to my European people, because I would go and get invited to a lot of festivals over there. I was, asked to speak a lot, on panels with people like Jason Blum and Cassian Hughes, and there's me. So believe it or not. So, which, these guys were kind of funny because as you can see, I will tell anybody anything of what I know. And if you go implement it, well, God bless, then I feel like I'm doing right. A lot of times these guys get up there, they don't want people to hear. I was like, why? Just tell them they're here, they're paying money. Anyway, that's my sidebar note. But I was blessed to be able to meet, you know, amazing filmmakers, one of the best filmmaker directors out of Finland called Aku Lomanes. And, I did a big screenwriting competition with the country of Norway called the US Norway Film Development Initiative, to which one of the films that came out, and now we're getting into my full-on career, is called The Birdcatcher. And that's a World War II Holocaust survivor story that I shot entirely in English using Norwegian money, UK money, and American money. And that was released by Signature in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. So did have a theatrical release, but then the pandemic happened. So that movie was wonderful. And our world premiere was in Santa Barbara International Film Festival. I was so
That's a
great.
nice festival.
Great festival. I have a long history with them as well. And then, from there we went to, I think, 27 festivals around the country and was super supportive. And that one's kind of really near and dear to my heart. That was roughly north of 7 million. So, I mean, that's a pretty big jump. I was in, kind of the micro 1 million or 2 million budget
Oh,
movie.
and the best movies are made between 3 and 10 million. Often it's much more the idea, and you know it. Yeah, you could add 100 million, but it's 90 and 90 million of schlock.
Yes.
So,
But I mean, we had real snow in first snow in
hmm.
Catcher. We shot in Norway. We had real snow, and I had August Deal in that movie as well. People might know August from Salt and from Inglorious Bastards. August just had a movie in Cannes when I was there, so I had texted him and said, "Wait, the something Joseph Mengele something is his new movie, but he's done a movie Hidden Life with Terrence Malick." So August and I. There goes back to that friendship theme, by the way, Jacques. It's like I'm blessed that every person that I have worked with along my career, who are still with us. As I mentioned, Ash, which is still near and dear to me. He passed away, but every person I've worked with, I can call up. They'll call me, even if I'm not involved in a project. They'll ask me, "Hey, do you know a guy?" That's kind of the joke is, Lisa knows people all over the world, which is true. And I'm happy to give that connection. Um, you and I met because of Krista Steele. And, Krista is a perfect example of that. She called me out of the blue and blah, blah, blah. And we started to talk. And I'm like, wait, I know, she needed something. And then, she introduced us. And Krista's now working with me doing product placement on a new feature that we hope to have going called Oldie Boys. And we hope to have that go into production this fall, if not this fall, this spring. So that had a big variety announcement in Cannes as well. So it's a
Oh, I
soccer movie about old guys who play soccer. Diner meets Full Monty meets City Slickers, right? It's like a bunch of ragtag soccer players over the age of 50 who are coached by a teenage soccer star.
Now, I know it's important to be both lucky and good, and I could see you've got a pretty magnetic and captivating personality. I see that's why I can see how that's taken you so far. Yeah, please go on. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I think knowing who your target audience is, it really does help when you're even looking for all your partners, when you're looking for your producers, when you're looking for your sales agents, right? Because sales agents also want to know, okay, where does this fit in the gamut of all the films that I'm representing and selling? I need, if you understand your market, it even does affect what you do put on the page and what you don't put on the page. It affects what actors that you put there or don't put there.
I think you bring up something very interesting, and I receive a lot of emails and calls about this myself. It's somebody who's, got a great idea, must make this film, doesn't really know where to go from there. They say, do you know a producer that may be interested in this? So, speaking to that person who has a personal story or a story that they're very committed to getting onto the screen and doesn't know how to then connect that to somebody like you, what do they need to know? That what step are they missing? What kind of tools do they need other than a very strong script?
Yeah, I would say the second thing I would do is film festivals. There's a big thing that's been going around LinkedIn. I've been seeing it. People are like, oh, there are ways to, they are not. Okay. Film festivals are the best way. And I'm talking big, small, medium. You don't have to travel all the way across the country if you don't have to, but I recommend you do if you can. Go overseas to those festivals. Those festivals, you would be so surprised how many other like-minded people, producers, writers, cinematographers, financiers that you meet at film festivals that, it is about that. Yes, you could have the best script in the whole world, but you have to also sell yourself. And it is a relationship collaborative business. And how you collaborate is how you get to know people. And there's no better way to get to know people when you are not always just pitching. You're seeing a movie together and you're talking about it afterwards. You're at a panel discussion and you might meet somebody in line at the bathroom. I can't tell you how many people that I have, big producers that I have met from going to festivals. So they are so important, and I hope that all the organizations that run film festivals out there, that they keep going and that people realize that there is such a blessing to have these things. It is what I would say the feeder. If you don't know where to start, that is the place to start.
Have you been to the Berlinale?
Yes, many, many times. That's when I was telling you when I first went over in 2008. So I have attended the Berlinale European Film Market. Now remember, there are four major markets a year that are tied to big festivals. Berlinale, which is European Film Market, that's in February. Your next big, gigantic one with a market is Cannes, and that's the Cannes Film Festival, along with the Marché du Film, which is the market. The next big market is, well, some people say Venice, some people say Venice, sorta, but the real next market would be, in the past, the American film market. But now it's really becoming Toronto. And in 2026, Toronto will have a market. So I don't know where that's going to leave our lovely, beautiful, wonderful folks who put on the American film market. I hope that continues as well. But Toronto will have a market. And then, so Berlinale, I would encourage every American filmmaker or anybody in the industry, they have to attend it once. It's the easiest festival to attend. The Germans do a amazing job with industry. It's not that expensive. Cannes is great. We brought it up before. I had the best time this year. It was the first time I was back in Cannes in 8 years. I went to a lot of black tie events. I'm very fortunate. Cannes can be extremely overwhelming and it's extremely expensive. Berlin, there's a hotel room everywhere you go that you can go, and it's affordable and it's all self-contained, and they do a great job and you see great films. So my two favorite festivals,
They have some beautiful theaters too, like the Place
the
de
Palais.
Cinema. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and again, there you go. That is a festival that you could attend for not a lot of money. It's a plane ticket over. I get that, but once you're there, they have transportation that went with your badge. So you're in a van with, one time I was in a van next to Christine Vachon from Killer Films. I mean,
Wow.
I think it's a lot. That festival has a lot of Sundance like vibes to it because it's small, it's self-contained, and it's well run, right?
Yeah.
Cannes a bit of a circus. Toronto also, I think, is one of the best film festivals. I'm talking major markets now. I have a slew of one lovely, amazing, what I call mid-tier festivals, like the Santa Fe International Film Festival. I love. But Toronto, if you want a major market, Toronto is and it's
And
close to
will
us.
you be in Toronto in September?
Yeah, yeah, I'll
Okay,
be in
we'll
Toronto.
have to get that glass of wine then, since
Oh,
we just
100%.
can.
We usually have a Producers Guild event, so I'll make sure, Doc, that you can
Oh
attend
yes,
us.
put me on the list for that.
I will.
So
Most definitely.
anything else? We're nearly at the time is up.
Yeah. I just think anybody who's listening, no matter where you are in the spectrum of this wonderful industry that we call cinematic film, um, you know, there's lots of things that you can do, even if you're not a writer. I mean, we need female editors, we need female cinematographers, we need people to be first ACs, everything. But in producing, learn all the pieces. So if we're going to say that, learn the script, the screen, learn what everybody else does, learn what a lot of the heads departments do. I'm not saying do their jobs, I'm saying learn what they do. So that way, then as a leader, because a producer is a ringleader, we run a big circus. But what we want to do is make sure that everybody's safe, that everybody does things, in a proper manner, and then, but also give them the autonomy to do what they do best. Those are the best leaders and producers in whatever industry you're in. So,
Well,
but don't give up, and don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. I'm a proud 57-year-old. I've had crazy careers and a very long career now in this with my shingles, but don't give up. You can even, we'll go back to Death on the Brandywine and we'll leave it at that. My writer, director, and producing partner, Nick Wilkinson, and he won't mind me saying this, he is over 60 and he did his first feature and he celebrated his 63rd birthday while we were filming. So for everybody who's out there of a certain age, it's not just for the young people.
well, Lisa, thank you so much. And everybody, this was producer, writer Lisa Black. The forthcoming film is called Death on the Brandywine, and we'll see you next week.